This video is brought to you by True Tales of Buried Treasure, the largest collection of old treasure magazines in the West. On our website, you can search for individual treasure stories by region, or buy our original magazines themselves. To pay us a visit, please click on the link in the description. Enjoy. Somewhere in the remote northern reaches of Canada lies a lost gold mine, a hidden treasure promising untold riches to the lucky soul who can rediscover it. Known as McLoud's Lode, the story of this legendary gold strike is as strange and mysterious as any lost treasure tale. It all began in the early 1900s when a very tall Nahani Indian, known locally as Little Nahani, arrived at Fort Liard, a key outpost in Canada's vast Northwest Territories. The area, wild and untamed, was familiar to the fur traders and gold prospectors who occasionally crossed its treacherous terrain. Grinning with excitement, Little Nahani strode into the Hudson Bay trading post and revealed a sack of quartz samples. The stones gleamed with streaks of gold, the kind of sight that drives men mad with greed. Though the Nahani refused to reveal the exact location of his find, he let slip that it was somewhere south of the junction of the Flat and South Nahani rivers. To the men of Fort Liard, this region was both familiar and dreaded. Located just south of the Arctic Circle, it had been crossed by gold hunters during the wild Klondike Stampede of 1897. Those who returned described a nightmarish land filled with treacherous muskeg, swarms of voracious mosquitoes, slimy bogs, and deadly whirlpools that could swallow boats whole. Adding to these terrifying descriptions, Nahani tribal elders present at the post gave a chilling warning. "That place is the Valley of Evil Spirits," they said. "You go to that valley to look for gold, and you will not come back." For generations, the Nahani people had told stories of this mysterious valley on the South Nahani River. They claimed it was a land of perpetual heat, where snow and ice never fell. Fog-bound caves hid evil spirits, ready to destroy any who dared to enter. Did the men of Fort Liard believe these tales? Perhaps they did. It is telling that despite the lure of gold, no one rushed off to find Little Nahani's fabled strike. But Little Nahani himself seemed unconcerned about the warnings. He had already found the gold that made him a momentary celebrity. He even gave several pieces to Bishop Brenner, who had traveled down from Fort Simpson. The bishop later fashioned these pieces into a watch chain and a ring, which he wore until his death. The excitement over Little Nahani's gold soon faded, and years passed without further discoveries. Then, in 1903, another Indian appeared in the region, this time with beautiful, gleaming gold nuggets. Unlike Little Nahani, this man was more forthcoming. He claimed to have found the nuggets near Bennett Creek, a small stream feeding into the Flat River. But Bennett Creek lay deep in what the Nahani people still called Evil Spirits Country. As stories of the valley's sinister reputation spread once again, even the most ambitious gold hunters lost their nerve. By the time Willie, Frank, and Charlie McLoud, three half-breed sons of Murdoch McLoud, a Hudson Bay Company factor at Fort Liard, heard the stories, the tales of Indian gold had grown considerably in detail and legend. Stripped of embellishment, however, they all pointed to one thing. Somewhere in the valley on the South Nahani River, near the lower end of the Mackenzie Range, lay a fabulous gold lode. For a man with enough courage and endurance, the rewards would be unimaginable. Determined to claim their fortune, Willie and Frank McLoud set off from Vancouver in January 1904. Their route took them first to Telegraph Creek, then overland to Lake Dease, and onward toward the fabled Flat River. As the McLoud brothers approached the Flat River, they encountered a party of friendly Cassiar Indians. Frank later described their surprise. They had some big stuff, nuggets as large as hen eggs. The McLouds tried their best to coax the location of the nuggets from the Indians, but they only smiled, feigned confusion, or pointed vaguely northward. Suspicious but undeterred, the brothers spent several weeks searching the immediate area without success. Eventually, they broke camp and moved toward the junction of Bennett Creek and the Flat River. Somewhere in this region, they found what they had been seeking, a $1 million gold lode. By this time, however, it was late autumn and their supplies were nearly exhausted. The McLouds built a crude, box-like boat from timber they stripped themselves. They loaded it with a large container of gold ore samples and set out downstream. Misfortune struck at a place ominously named Cascade of the 13 Drops. The box boat overturned, spilling the ore into the river. Though they managed to salvage the boat, the journey became an arduous struggle. At last, just as the first snow fell, the brothers staggered into Fort Liard. During the winter of 1904-1905, Willie McLoud worked for the Hudson's Bay Company, but he and Frank were consumed with gold fever. They couldn't stop talking about the valley they had seen, a strange and beautiful place hidden among dark purple canyons and towering emerald peaks. It was a stretch of the South Nahani River, a stream of extraordinary beauty that seemed to flow from nowhere to nowhere. Originating in the Selwyn Mountain glaciers, the river rushed southward for 400 miles before joining the Liard. The valley itself, the brothers claimed, was unlike anything else in the northern wilderness. Despite the ice and snow covering the surrounding mountains, it abounded with lush, vibrant greenery. Fruit and flowers grew wild, exotic butterflies and unusual birds flitted through the warm air, and thick, wet fog hung over the entire valley. The brothers attributed the unusual semi-tropical climate to the many hot sulfur springs that spouted geysers of steaming vapor skyward. Most people listened politely to the McLeod's incredible tale, but left shaking their heads. However, one man, a Scottish engineer named Wilkinson, showed keen interest. When the brothers prepared to return to the Flat River in the spring of 1905, Wilkinson eagerly joined them. Little did they know, this decision would deepen the mystery. 3 years passed. By the spring of 1908, no word had come from Willie or Frank. Their younger brother, Charlie McLoud, grew worried and set out to find them, tracing the route they had planned. Along the way, Charlie encountered no one who had seen or heard of his brothers. Late that summer, Charlie stumbled upon the entrance to an unfamiliar valley. There, sticking upright in the soft earth, he found the broken runner of a dog sled. Scrawled along the wood in bold letters were 6 words: "We have found a fine prospect." Charlie instantly recognized the handwriting. It was Willie's. The message, however, gave no date or further details. Spurred by hope, Charlie pushed deeper into the warming valley. Soon, he noticed a strange change in the surrounding landscape. The plants were unusually lush, confirming the tropical-like valley his brothers had described. About a mile downstream, Charlie made a grim discovery. He came upon an abandoned campsite. A weathered rifle leaned against a tree, under which 2 bedrolls lay spread out. Nearby, 2 skeletons clad only in the remnants of tattered underwear lay exposed to the elements. Charlie froze. He knew the equipment immediately. It belonged to his brothers, Willie and Frank. The search was over, and the truth was undeniable. His missing brothers were no longer missing. After recovering from the shock, Charlie searched the area for any sign of Wilkinson, the Scottish engineer. There was no trace of him. However, the unusual valley around him was further proof that his brothers' stories had not been exaggerations. Returning to Fort Liard, Charlie reported his findings to the mounted police. A search for Wilkinson was launched, but the Nahani Indians simply grunted and shook their heads. "Evil spirits killed people," they said. Wilkinson was never found, yet rumors persisted that he had turned up at both Telegraph Creek and Vancouver, reportedly with gold nuggets worth $17,000. The tale of the McLoud brothers' gold strike grew, attracting gold seekers from far and wide. Among them was a wiry Swedish prospector named Martin Jorgensen, whose own journey into the Nahani wilderness would soon add another chapter to the legend. In 1909, Martin Jorgensen arrived in the region, grub-staked by Poole Field, a former Mountie who ran a trading post on the Ross River. Field, confident in Jorgensen's abilities, believed that if anyone could relocate the fabled McLoud lode, it was him. With supplies and determination, Jorgensen headed north into the wilderness. 2 years passed with no word from Jorgensen. Then, one day, a pockmarked Indian trapper arrived at Field's store with an unusual story. While trapping near the entrance to the tropical valley, he had encountered an excited stranger, Jorgensen, who urgently needed a letter delivered to Ross River Junction. Offering generous payment for the task, the trapper agreed, especially since his route led in that direction. The letter, addressed to Field, revealed that Jorgensen had made an incredibly rich strike. He had built a cabin on the right bank of the South Nahani River near his claim and urged Field to join him immediately. Enclosed with the letter was a map showing the cabin's location, though it gave no indication of where the gold strike lay. The trapper also showed Field a bag of large gold nuggets that Jorgensen had given him, payment far beyond what was needed for delivering a letter. The reckless generosity confirmed to Field that Jorgensen had found gold in abundance. Determined to see the claim for himself, Field set out. Using the map, Field easily located the cabin site, but what he found was unsettling. The log shack had been burned to the ground. Near the riverbank, amidst the ashes, lay a man's skeleton. Beside it were a broken rifle and 2 spent shells. There were no clothes or any form of identification, but Field was convinced the remains belonged to Martin Jorgensen. Before leaving, Field searched the surrounding area thoroughly, but found no sign of the rich strike Jorgensen had written about. In 1929, another party answered the call of gold. Prospector Angus Hall, along with 2 companions named Hay and Gilroy, ventured into the valley. Later, Hay and Gilroy returned alone, reporting that Hall had grown frustrated with their slow progress and set off by himself. Hall was never seen or heard from again. In 1931, a trapper named Phil Powers tried his luck, hoping to locate the old McLoud strike and perhaps gather valuable furs. When he failed to return, the mounted police launched a search. Constables Martin and Edwards found Powers' skeleton near the ruins of his burned cabin. A rusted revolver, still clutched in his bony hand, had been fired 6 times. The grim stories continued. In 1936, Winnipeg prospector Bill Epple and Joe Mulholland of Minnesota ventured into the valley and met the same fate. In 1940, others followed. Andy Hayes, a man named O'Brien, Yukon Fisher, and a female prospector named Annie Laferde. All were found dead, their remains scattered across the mysterious valley. By 1945, Ernest Savard became another victim. Savard had previously entered the valley and emerged safely with rich ore samples. This time, however, his luck ran out. His lifeless body was found curled up in his sleeping bag, his secrets about the gold strike buried with him. In 1946, prospector John Patterson disappeared into the valley, leaving his partner, Frank Henderson, waiting for him at their rendezvous point. Patterson never returned. Reflecting on the eerie experience, Henderson later said, "There is no denying the sinister atmosphere of the whole place. The continual wailing of the wind is something I won't forget soon." In May of 1948, a confident gold hunter named Louis Shebach left Fort Liard for the valley. A year later, mounted police discovered his bleached bones near Caribou Creek. While some claimed that no white man had ever entered the valley and returned alive, this wasn't entirely true. Many men passed through the strange region and lived to tell the tale. Among them were 2 Canadians, Raymond Patterson and Gordon Matthews. Patterson first ventured into the valley alone in 1927. On Twisted Mountain, he found a paradise of wildflowers, everything from roses to purple orchids, along with currants and 7 types of edible berries. He described the place as a veritable garden, alive with butterflies of every color of the rainbow. In 1928, Patterson returned, this time accompanied by his friend Gordon Matthews. Together, they explored the mysterious valley that had claimed so many lives. In 1951, Raymond Patterson made a 3rd expedition into the region, drawn by the area's intriguing mysteries. Years earlier, American adventurer Fenley Hunter had traversed the South Nahani River beyond the mouth of the Flat River and discovered a breathtaking waterfall, 316 feet high, twice the height of Niagara Falls. This natural wonder now bears the name Virginia Falls. Between 1909 and 1933, Sourdough Jack Stanier of Fort Liard became somewhat of a legend himself, having made 9 unsuccessful attempts to find the lost McLoud's lode. His determination, however, was reignited when he learned of a map. A priest named Father Turcotte of the Oblate Fathers reportedly possessed a map drawn decades earlier by Willie McLoud. Sourdough Jack tracked down the priest and discovered that the map had been found in an old trunk belonging to Father Gouet, a friend of the McLouds. The map, almost 30 years old, pinpointed a site on Bennett Creek that appeared to indicate gold diggings. Elated, Stanier set off once again for the valley. Although he successfully located the spot shown on the map, he found nothing but rusted shovels, rotted sluice boxes, and old pans. The map was accurate in geography, but led to nothing valuable, so far as a lost gold lode was concerned. In 1937, millionaire oilman and big game hunter Harry Snyder launched his own search for the gold. While he too failed to find any sign of treasure, he did make an extraordinary discovery: a previously unknown range of Sawtooth Mountains rising 12,000 feet high along the headwaters of the South Nahani River. These mountains now bear Snyder's name. Snyder's expedition wasn't in vain, as he collected valuable biological specimens for both the American Museum of Natural History in New York and the National Museum of Canada in Ottawa. Yet the questions persisted. Does the valley truly hide a lost gold bonanza? The Canadian Department of Mines believes there's a legitimate chance. They point to the rich Yellowknife goldfield discovered on the shore of Great Slave Lake to the east, which has yielded millions since its discovery in 1934. Skeptics have often questioned the idea of a tropical valley in the heart of the northern wilderness. However, the evidence suggests otherwise. In 1931, Dr. Norman Henry of the Philadelphia Academy of Natural Sciences led an expedition into the region, accompanied by his wife and F.F. McCusker of the Canadian Topographical Survey. The team discovered a valley warmed by hot springs. They bathed in mineral pools with water temperatures reaching 90 degrees. Mrs. Henry later described the lush valley as a paradise. Delphiniums grew over 8 feet tall, while raspberries, roses, and vetches tangled together in the thickest, most luxuriant growth I've ever seen. The U.S. Navy's Polar Projects Department later confirmed that hot springs, combined with Chinook winds that warm the valley, create this unusual microclimate. For many years, the valley has had a sinister reputation, the department noted, but the tropical-like vegetation and climate are very real. In 1944, Tom Smith and his half-native daughter Jane set up a homestead in a hot valley within 7 degrees of the Arctic Circle. For 2 years, they successfully grew potatoes, onions, and even tobacco before Smith tragically lost his life in the wild river rapids nearby. Interest in the valley continued into the modern era. In the summer of 1961, Winton Noble and 4 companions set out from Toronto, determined to dispel the tropical valley legend once and for all. Upon their return, Noble described the landscape in vivid detail. The expedition had navigated the treacherous South Nahani River, passing between cliffs so towering over 2,000 feet that the sunlight disappeared. Eventually, they reached the fabled valley. Noble called it a real Shangri-La, describing green meadows, trout-filled streams, semi-tropical vegetation, and bushes heavy with fruit. Game animals, from mountain sheep to eagles, flourished in the area. The men even tired of catching fish, so abundant were they. Everywhere, the pungent scent of sulfur lingered, rising from mineral-rich ponds that made excellent natural baths. Yet the valley's beauty was overshadowed by its deadly reputation. Between the early 1900s and the mid-20th century, at least 15 explorers met grisly ends in their pursuit of the McLoud's lost lode. Some, like prospector Phil Powers, were found clutching rusted firearms in burned-out cabins. Others, like Ernest Savard, who had once safely returned with rich ore samples, were discovered dead in their sleeping bags. John Patterson vanished in 1946, leaving his partner Frank Henderson to remark on the valley's eerie atmosphere. The wailing wind is something I won't forget. In 1948, gold hunter Louis Shebach was found bleached and lifeless near Caribou Creek. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, tasked with patrolling the area, remained pragmatic about the deaths. "We haven't seen any evil spirits," an officer explained, "but we do see man-killing bears now and then, and there were some pretty wild Indians up there before they were wiped out by tuberculosis and smallpox. The truth is, most of these people starved to death. Bears or renegades got the rest." Despite the dangers and deaths, the legend of Canada's Shangri-La Valley and the lost McLoud's lode persists. Perhaps one day, a determined treasure hunter will survive the valley's many perils, whether spirits, bears, or wilderness hardships, and finally confirm the existence of its fabled gold bonanza. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to read the original article or purchase the magazine from which it was taken, please check out our website, truetalesofburiedtreasure.com.